Because if you want to for a misleading information, exclude all of the half a level. Did we just have to imagine that people are active?
Um, okay, a few days ago, there was this news report. I don't know if you're aware of it, about Intercept. Intercept is a sort of logistics company which basically takes charge of government facilities, right? So usually what the government tends to do is to outsource a lot of these service works to companies. So it's a very crowded area, brutal competition, suicidal bids, as it were, So when I mean suicidal bids, you're bidding so tight, your profit margin is really low. Of course, your senior managers get paid lots of money. So invariably, what happens? Things like this happen. So in this case, you see, this was on the 10th of March. It's like, it was reported that it was likely to go into administration. That's not the reason I'm pointing this out. Look at the story. It really tracks what we've been talking about. So the company has a debt of 650 million. And obviously they've considered a range of things, right? Remember, we have various options to consider. Do you go into administration? Do you do a CVA? The last time we talked, we did a debt, equity debt swap, remember? So we swapped debt into equity. So that's what they've been talking about. So a plan to swap the majority of that debt for new shares requires the support of the shareholders, right? And remember, we talked about this, and we said, would the shareholders allow themselves to be diluted? And we said, presumably the logic would be that is it not better to be diluted and be small in something that does exist, rather than to own shares in something that disappears? And so we talked about the folly of greed. A U.S. hedge fund, which owns 27%, is currently debt set against the plan. They don't want to be diluted. And it says here, since small shareholders don't vote, even in a crisis like this, the support of Coltrane is seen as crucial to get this deal through. And remember now, Coltrane obviously has preemption rights. The reason why it's able to block this is because of capital structure. Remember, we talked about who controls capital structure. Remember, we talked about Section 551, the power to authorize directors to issue shares and then to waive preemption rights. So that's why the shareholder is able to block it. Now, the board's plan would see current shareholders awarded 5% of the company, with the rest going to creditors, right? So if they do this, you can see why the U.S. shareholder is saying, if that's the case, well, let this thing just go, right? Because, if all the shareholders get 5%, and Coltrane has 27%, you can imagine, right? But, how do you think this is going to play out? Who has the upper hand here? Surely the creditor. The creditor has the upper hand, and you know what they're going to do. They're just going to force a pre-pack, right? They're not just going to wait for these guys. They'll just sell everything. So anyway, so it says here, an overly indebted private provider of public services going to the wall after years of suicide bidding to win government contracts, at the same time as paying out big salaries and dividends. As it was bound to happen. And so they're drawing parallel with another company. So if they can't do a deal, what will happen? Accountants will be appointed. So if you go back to our seminar sheet, you see administration. Accountants will be appointed administrators. They will then sell the company for a nominal amount to the current lenders, a mixture of banks and bondholders, who will then own everything. The banks will then look to sell off different parts in due course. And that's why I talked about the pre-pack. Literally, they've lined up people to start buying the bets. The board does not expect any interruption to the company's underlying contracts or any job losses. Right? So you can see how this is played out. It's essentially what we're literally talking about the last time. And then somebody had raised a question about, so now I digress before going to the material for today. Somebody had raised a question about how a new holding company structure creates distributable reserves. I can't remember, but I got some email. Remember when we talk about, so notice we've left this, right? So we're talking about sometimes when you use a new holding company structure, the rationale is to create distributable reserves so that you'll be able to pay a dividend in the future. And the way you do it, remember, there are two things you combine, right? So there's a scheme of arrangement which you need to cancel the relevant shares, and then there is a reduction of capital. So you bring the two together. Now, so when you bring a new holding company, so if you kind of go to time one, there was one company before. Think about the Melrose deal. That jumps to my mind, or Remand, right? But let's take the Melrose deal. So you have a company, and then what you want to do is create a new Melrose company, right? So, and how do you do it? You basically expel the shareholders in the old Melrose company and give them shares in the new Melrose company, right? The way you do that obviously would be a cancellation of their shares, right? A cancellation of their shares, and the end result, assuming you were the guys who were shareholders in the old Melrose company, you will find yourselves as the new shareholders, right, of the new Melrose company. And the new Melrose company would own all the shares of the old Melrose company, right? It will own all the shares of the old Melrose company. So in other words, the old Melrose company will become a subsidiary. Now, when you then, so this is the question, how do you then create the distributable reserves? When you get into the new Melrose company, you will then do a further reduction of capital. If you do a reduction of capital, so assuming you have shares in the new Melrose company with a nominal value of, let's say, £5, and you reduce it to 50p, right? That's a reduction of capital. Literally what you've done is you've created 4.50, right, for each one, right? And that would be it. So if you go back to I think I sent you a note on the Melrose transaction. Remember there was the Melrose transaction. Look at the facts in that. I think it was a transaction that they didn't go to court or anything like that. At least there was no reported dispute in regard to it. But if you look at the facts, you would see that at this last point I'm talking about, the reduction of capital in the new Melrose company, that was able to generate distributable reserves of about 150 million just by changing, right? All you just do, you go to court, right, and say to the judge, we have shares with a nominal value of £5, and we want to reduce it to 50p, right? And if you do that, that's a reduction of capital. Now you've created a reserve, right?
And there's no creditors, is there?
So?
There's no creditors.
Yeah, no, exactly, you know. So, okay. Now, so I hope you gave some thoughts to what we've been talking about. You guys look tired. What's up? Headache. It's like
Too much studying.
too much studying. When you become like me, you'll even know more. I mean, I was like up at 4. I went to bed at 2, up at 4. Had to deliver an opinion, and here I am. But anyway, Um, so yeah. Um, so here we're talking about. Remember the story last time? The company had to do this debt equity swap. So the company has become a success, and now the people who work for the company wish to buy the company. They wish to become very rich, but they don't have too much money. So what do? They seek to interest banks to provide debt finance. They probably have borrowed themselves. They've got family to contribute. So they will be talking to a private equity fund, the investor. They'll be talking to banks. Then the little money they can muster, they will come up with it. Remember, we're talking about the management of the target, and they need to do a deal. They need to come up with a price that would sufficiently be attractive to the target shareholders. Right? Obviously, so what we're trying to do at this stage is just look at how the deal will be done and deal with the areas of friction. I mean, the last time we spoke, we talked about an area of friction, and that would be in the relationship between the target shareholders and the management of the target. That clearly would be an area of friction. And how do we deal with this? How do we deal with this? Somebody who hasn't spoken. How do we deal with this? I mean, when I say friction, you know what the friction is. I mean, always the best way to, by now you should know this, but it's always very helpful. The best way to understand these finance type subjects, no matter how complex they may seem, always put yourself in the picture. Always imagine it's your money that's at stake. It has a way of concentrating the mind, and then it becomes less abstract, right? People always say human rights is easy to work out. It's because you can feel it when they lock you up. But if they take your money too, you can feel it. So if you are a shareholder, right, in a company, and management come to meet you to say, we want to buy your company and we're offering you a price, would you take that price immediately? Would you take it? What do you think? Yeah, I thought you. So you're the manager. Sorry, you're the shareholder of a company, and
If it's a good price,
so yeah, if it's a good
premium, yeah.
if it's a good price. Now remember, the company is not listed on the market, right? How do you know what is a good price?
Which of the two companies is not listed?
Sorry?
Which of the two companies?
No. There's only one company here, isn't it? The company we want to buy, we want to take over. Remember, there's only one company at this stage. Hmm? Sorry, just to be clear. Remember, the story from last week was this one company. Maybe we should have given it a name. That's the problem. If we had given it a name, we would know there was one company. So we'll call it the One Company Limited. And we did the debt equity swap. We were able to save this One Company Limited. Now, the One Company Limited is not listed. Right? Remember the story last time? We did the debt equity swap, the banks were there, maybe now we've paid off the banks, they've got their monies back. And the managers who have been working really hard now thinking, you know what, why don't we buy this company? But who are they buying it from? They're buying it from the shareholders. Now he says he would accept it, he would accept the price they're offering if it is a good price.
I mean, I might evaluate the various cash flows and discount them at the present value.
You don't think that would be too narrow? That means you would always sell cheaply. Anybody can do that. You think about it. You're basically saying we'll look at the cash flows, right?
Yeah.
And discounted to present value. That just gives you a flaw, a very tiny flaw, because what you're doing essentially is you are not exploiting the option value of doing different things, of even capitalizing on value that the directors know that nobody knows yet, right? So and that's why the directors want to buy it from you, right? The managers want to buy it from you because they know they can realize value. And you're saying, so they come up with a spreadsheet and say, yeah, we've done our DCF, this is money, and they give you £2 million, and like Avenatti, you say, I'll go to the sun. How did he put it? I'd run into the sun, I'd ride into the sun, sunshine or whatever. I don't know, have you been following Avenatti? Oh, okay. What planet do you guys live on? Anyway, that's Stormy Daniels' lawyer, who may be spending 50 years in jail for forging client stuff. So he was basically trying to take down Nike, and he says, just give me 22 million and I'll ride into the sun. The picture that came to my mind was a cowboy, Yeah, but anyway, so tell me, what do we do? I think now we know what the problem is. What is it we need? We need something.
Could they refer to the price of stock or shares listed in the stock exchange in the same industry in the comparable situation as a basis for their acceptance of the price?
Yeah. But I hear you, but maybe we shouldn't be doing that because what you're doing is we're going to be very quickly out of our depths, right? Why don't we meet somebody who is an expert at this, somebody who has reputational capital and would therefore not want to squander it? What we need is a gatekeeper. That's what we need, a gatekeeper. You need an advisor, right, to get involved. And that's why, if you look at the Takeover Code, I think Rule 3 of the Takeover Code says that whenever you're doing a management buyout, in fact, let me pull it out. Look. Okay, so look at the management buyouts. The requirement for competent independent advice is of particular importance in cases where the offer is a management buyout or similar transaction, or is being made by the existing controller or group of controllers. In such cases, it is particularly important that the independence of the advisors be unquestioned. Furthermore, responsibility borne by the advisor is considerable, and for this reason, the board of the target should appoint an independent advisor as soon as possible. Right? So that would be a case where the company is subject to the code, obviously. Yeah, but even if the company is not subject to the code, that's what you want. Yeah. Yeah. So interesting question. The company will be subject. First of all, private companies are subject to the code. And that's something sometimes people miss. And there's a reported case on this called Chase-Nico. You don't need to bother with it, where it was Chase-Nico. Chase-Nico. It used to be a chain of restaurants and they were doing. It was a privately run company, and there was a bid, and they discovered that actually the code applied. So to answer your question, if a company is listed, right? So you're registered in the UK and you're listed, the code will apply. If the company is registered in the UK, used to be listed, right? So within the last 7 years, the code will apply. If the company, and that would be the case even if the company is private, right? And that's what caught up companies like Chase Nico. So essentially, your typical company, right? Obviously, a small private company will not be covered, right? Because you don't need. The reason why you need the takeover code is because in a company, you may not be able to rely on the parties protecting themselves generally using rules of contract. So we then bring in this external regulation called the takeover code. But obviously, if there are 5 people here, we can protect ourselves. We don't need any takeover code. Obviously, if we're many, then we need a takeover code, right? So that's the point. So, in a nutshell, coming back to what we're saying, right? It doesn't really matter whether the takeover code applies. You remember, I just digressed when I mentioned takeover code, right? It doesn't matter whether or not the takeover code applies. You need somebody to hold your hand. You need somebody to be there, who has reputational capital, to assist you, so that management do not take advantage of you. That's essentially the point I am making. Right? Okay. Then, so here, so the structure here is that you remember you want to buy this company. You're the management. You want to buy this company. So essentially, what we do is that we form 2 new companies. So essentially what will happen is that you will have 3 companies in the picture. The reason why you need to form 2 companies as opposed to 1, I mean, you could do it with 1, right? Management could simply form a company and then use that company, right, to take over the target, right? So essentially, what management would do is you form a company, you raise finance from banks, you put in equity capital in this your company, and then you take over the target, right? You could easily do that. But the reason why you would want to set up 2 is that most financiers, sorry?
Tax.
Tax, yes, but the number one, because it all depends on the kind of regime. So the usual thing is because of subordination. The senior lender, who is, usually the acquisition structure would be a huge amount of money, right, to do the acquisition, provided usually by a senior lender, and then there will be a working capital facility, which would either be an overdraft or, the usual kind of thing, right? And maybe, as an aside, there'll be an ancillary letter containing guarantees. Well, let's not complicate it. The point is, if you're bringing all that cash, you want to be sure that you have access to the cash flows of the operating company, right? If things go pear-shaped. So you have NewCo 1. NewCo 1 is the investment vehicle for the venture capitalist investor and management team. And NewCo 2 is the wholly owned subsidiary of NewCo 1. Right? And it acts as the acquiring and bank debt vehicle. So NUCO 2 is actually the vehicle that actually does the acquisition, right? So when it comes to buying the target, right? Buying the target from the shareholders, you're really going to be doing it through NUCO 2, right? So let's just bear that in mind. It's a wholly owned subsidiary of NUCO 1, and it acts as the acquiring and bank debt vehicle. So this is where they finance. The banks put in money, and this company essentially acquires the business from the target shareholders, or rather target company, and essentially borrows money from the bank. Now, essentially, at this stage, what you want to do is, to the extent that you've dealt with the conflict of interest issues to do with the shareholders, if you can convince the shareholders, then what you want to do is also convince the people who will be giving you equity finance. Because remember, although you're bringing some of the equity finance, you're not rich enough, right? The management can't bring all the equity finance. You need to meet a private equity house to bring the cash. So a private equity house is going to say, you know what, let's configure shares to be protected, right? So they're going to configure the articles of association to protect the private equity house, but they're not going to rely on the articles of association, because anybody who understands, our company law would know that the articles of association is pretty limited in what you can do. So, for instance, not all rights can be enforced if you put in the articles of association. You see, the articles of association is the constitution of the company, and all I'm trying to say here is that if you are the manager of the company who wants to buy this company from the shareholders, and you go to meet a private equity house, it's a fund with lots of money, they are going to want to dictate terms, right, in regard to the control of the company. So they're going to be saying, the way we are going to dictate terms is to configure your share rights. Remember, we talked about this. So if they want to control things, they want vetoes and all that, they're going to use that. But because the articles of association are a bit limited in achieving everything, they would say, something, we also want an investment agreement. So that's why you will always have two agreements brought, yeah.
When you say the articles are limited, could you give me an example of the sort of things that you wouldn't be able to do?
Yeah, okay, so before I give you an example, just to start from the basics, the articles of association as a constitution represent a contract, but it's a contract which binds the company and the member. So it therefore follows that if I, as a member, confer rights on myself, not in my capacity as member, but for some extraneous purpose, to do maybe with the management of the company, then it's not enforceable. So if I say that, technically, if I say I will be director of the company, well, sorry, director is not part of the Section 33 contract. It's an outsider right. I mean, there are many ways we can go around it to give it effect, but, we have what we call extrinsic contract and all that, but technically it's an outsider right. If I say I'm going to be the solicitor to the company, it's not enforceable. So if somebody says to you, we will make you life solicitor of the company, and by the way, we'll write it in the articles, it's not enforceable. Do you see? So really what you want to do is move to the investment agreement. So for instance, if you look here, you see the investment agreement will impose more restrictions on the transfer of shares. You can put restrictions on transfer of shares in the articles, but if you want it tighter, you put it there, because then if it's in the investment agreement, you're freeing it from limitations in company law. So what you want to put in the articles of association would be classes of shares. If you're issuing redeemable preference shares, remember we talked about the ratchet incentivization issue to get redemption, right? You want to force redemption to occur quickly, so you'll put that. That you can put in the articles of association. Dividend rights, right? Obviously will be in the articles of association. Your voting rights. Some years ago, people tried to put in weighted voting, and there was a case which went to the House of Lords that basically said weighted. The argument was that weighted voting was wrong, it was not possible. But the House of Lords said it was possible, it was fine. And that must be correct, right? So it's a case called Bushel and Fate, which there was a dissenting judgment in the House of Lords where the judge basically said, well, what you're trying to do is to subvert the company law rule, which says that a simple resolution, an ordinary resolution, should be enough to remove the director of a company. That was a company law rule. But what they tried to do was to subvert this by the holder of shares. His shares basically will increase, or rather his votes will increase by a factor of 3 whenever they try to remove him. So you can see why somebody in the House of Lords thought this was against the company, against company law. But by now we should know that you and I can write that judgment easily, and you write it very quickly, right? Because you just know that the configuration of share rights at the end of the day is a marketing issue. You can allocate whatever rights, and that will be protected. Preference shares, preemption, so that's fine. If you want to start putting things like, okay, you need to have provisions on your key man. What happens if the brains of your company dies, right? What do we do? Then all those things go into your investment agreement, right? So essentially, the investment agreement is really regulating the relationship between the private equity fund, which is bringing a lot of equity finance, and management, right? It's regulating that relationship, right? It's regulating that relationship, and then when you then get to the point of debt finance, when you get to the point of debt finance, again, it could be very simple. You could simply say, we only need one bank to provide one type of facility. It all depends on the kind of deal you're doing. But generally speaking, what tends to happen is that there are layers of debt, depending on the size of the acquisition, obviously. Senior debt would usually be what we call the core of acquisition finance. So we ask the question, how much do you need to take over this company? So imagine, we're talking about the last company we just looked at, and the cost to acquire the company is £650 million. That would be the facility you need. But you need more than that, because you also need to run the company. You need working finance. So that's why in many of these transactions, there will also be a working finance facility, which may not necessarily be provided by the same the same lender. In some cases they do, sometimes not. And then you then have junior debt. So usually this would be pretty expensive debt with a high coupon rate, so you're essentially paying high interest because of the risk they face. And so somewhere it is really in the middle. So if you think about it this way, that the people who lose their shares first would be the shareholders, right? Because the shareholders are the receivable claimants. Oh, no, maybe unsecured creditors actually. So unsecured creditors, right? I mean, it's just like if it goes into solemn liquidation, we still have to pay the unsecured creditors first before the shareholders, right? If it doesn't go into liquidation, then I would say let's start with the shareholders. But if the company is to really end, then the unsecured creditors, will have priority over the shareholders. But in terms of the financing structure, if we look at the time of the financing structure, you'll see that shareholders are the residual claimants. Then in the middle, you will have mezzanine finance, and then senior debt at the top. Now, what we need to be interested in regard to this, would be the relevant terms. Now, last week we were talking about warranties and covenants. So what would you use with this? What would you use?
As the senior lender or as who?
Yeah, just any lender. Any lender.
Well, you would first of all get a share pledge, and then you would also get upstream guarantees and.
Yeah, but let's look at it maybe in an easy way. So if we're to write the facility, if you were to write the facility, so you're drafting whatever documentation you need to draft in regard to the debt aspects, what sort of things would come to your mind? First, I just gave you one example when I talked about, well, two examples. When I talked about covenants and warranties. Would you place more emphasis on warranties than covenants, or the other way around? Sorry? Where would you put your firepower?
Probably covenants.
Sorry?
Probably covenants.
Yeah.
Warranties are a bit easier to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, I was surprised that it was taking you long. I mean, a warranty is just you telling them to, at the very beginning, tell you certain things, right? So you're basically saying, what I've seen today, in terms of ownership of business, title, conduct of litigation, things like that. You're basically warranting these facts, and if they're false, I will sue you. Right? I'll sue you if they're false. And every time you draw down, you will repeat it. That's what a warranty. That's what a warranty is about, right? But does that really give you a lot of protection if the company goes bust? I mean, if the company goes bust, then you're suing on a warranty. You're just an unsecured creditor. So if you really want control, would you not be going for covenants? Isn't that what you'll be going for? And what kind of covenants would be of interest to you?
Financial ratios?
Yes, yeah. Precise. So essentially what you want to do is to have control over the target company. Remember now, if you're a bank and you're given finance for this acquisition, what you want to do is look at the business plan. Remember, these guys have come to you with a business plan, right? They've come with a business plan with projections. And all you want to do is use your covenants to ensure that those projections are met. Isn't it? That's right. So the warranties would be about them telling the truth, right, and not lying, and but the covenants would be to ensure that they do not deviate from the business plan, which would deliver the things that they've promised to deliver. Then, in addition to that, what else? Yes. So, and that again will be part of your covenants, right? So, would you not be interested in also preventing them from paying dividends, at least dividends which will impair their ability to deliver? In other words, are you going to be relying on Section 831, or are you going to make your own rules? I think that's the point I'm making. Yeah, precisely. You would have to make your own rules to essentially, tighten things up. So what else would you be thinking of?
Are we still talking covenants?
Yeah, within covenants.
Leverage levels?
Yeah. So that would be part of your financial. Then what about your negative pledge clause? Your negative pledge clause, whereby you are getting them to undertake not to create security, right? Let me just pull this out. My battery has just gone, so I just need to, and that wasn't charging it. Or you know what, let's take a 10-minute break here, and then it will give me time to set up this. Yeah, so I'll be able to set this up. So 10 minutes, and then you come back. Yeah.
I thought you couldn't. Didn't speak. Didn't speak until then he said. Maybe it's different. Remember why when you were a shareholder and a director, then you both got your 3 times with a lawyer. But I'm thinking, Thomas as a shareholder is the right of yeah. Would that not be possible? As long as you are the shareholder as well. Yeah, it's a shareholder agreement. Sorry, what? Maybe. Might have to make a phone call. When will we home? Like 9:30. I didn't get home till 9:30. Yeah. Well, we got
Your question after the lecture.
Maybe after, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, yeah.
我觉得这个事情他们后面确实是做的，怎么会奔出这么一个事情？那现在是这样的啊，你们也会一直出去，这个是当地的土政者他这个过来的关系。那我觉得这个在这个经济政策上，我觉得很 习惯，因为工商的情况我不太清楚。
I
现对啊，然后我说，而且我觉得我说你这个是人家本来就不想做自己的，把人放地上，这么背道而驰是吧？然后呢，现在这样，现在他那个执照下来以后，他有数据要传递到税务局，需要一天时间，所以税务的登记和什么东西有可能要到下周一。下周一的话呢，这样的话呢，下周一14日。那么弄好以后，这个31号的东西上，你要弄4月1号到税务局报税还是可以的，还是没问题的。还是没问题的。
You were going to the workshop. I've been looking forward to it.
Oh.
I called him this morning. That's the only routine I know.
明天。
Yeah, very strong.
明天就先把银行账户和那个章先把它盖好。
没有。But that we could speak about it.
Well, that's more than
明白了。明白了。
thanks for submitting your research plan. It all looks very
联系好不好？
Yeah, well, that's not feedback what I got. She said it was
because you're so good and you already caught all the problems and handled them.
but then I'm expecting a distinction if it's not to criticize.
You should probably get that anyway.
I think you just...
I think my chances for distinction in that is like 0.1%.
Maybe when it's
I hate like big projects like that. It's hard.
吃过饭吗？
Maybe I
你们哪有？
can
吃过饭吗？
do all the other modules.
我问你，我问你一个问题，你现在注册合伙企业是不是要2个执行委员？有没有这个规则？对啊，就是变成2个法人代表，就1个人。但是如果要去考虑这个你要是因为我跟你说啊，我跟你说，如果说我在学习一个学的，没什么太大作用。第二个，你出了什么的感受？所以我觉得没有正面没必要。哎，我跟你讲，有几个学校没一定现在是。
Let me ask you a very quick question. It wasn't really clear to me in the exams. Are we going to have to answer 2 questions or 1?
2.
Okay, thank you.
Can you add one bit? You need to give me all your... 但是我为什么关了 so that I can do it again? Yeah. 这个飞花很多，它ตรงนี้ลงไปได้แบบอันนี้เรียนนี้แตกit's just one of the previous
我跟你说，你换知识产权了。
แต่มันจะเป็นรุ่นที่เป็นโปรแกรมอะไรกัน
你换知识产权了。
ไม่รู้อะไรไม่รู้อะไร
但是你升官会有一定的升官会有一定的业务有，但是档案会加紧一点，他每天写的材料这个知识产权好多了，好多了，这个。
Yeah, but in India you also pay.
看你自己想法。
You give tips, so it's also not.
对，这感觉好多了。心里有杂念，心里有杂念，偶尔有觉得这块什么心理一思念，就思思念，要消灭自己心里一闪念，私心一闪念，好像是，那就心里告诉我们大概是这个不好，如果是我的。 努力吧。
Okay, so I think we can we can start. Yeah. So we're talking about how you will structure the financial documents. So remember we said that because you're going to have like usually about two facilities, junior debt and senior debt. So there will be facility agreements. Usually this will, beyond the points we talked about, like covenants and warranties, the bank certainly would be asking for mandatory repayment provisions, which would usually follow on a change of control. So assuming there's a change of control, then the loans will be immediately repayable. Sometimes the mandatory repayment provisions will be triggered on a disposal of assets, usually if you hit a particular threshold, right? So those are the things, the warranties, the covenants, your mandatory repayment. And then usually you would have a mezzanine agreement as a separate agreement, which invariably people tend to do after you've got your senior facilities agreement, because it will mirror your senior facilities agreement, right? And simply track it, right? So you don't sort of prepare the mezzanine facility agreement first. You wait for the senior one, the key areas of difference obviously would be interest rates, usually maybe security, and then whoever is providing mezzanine finance would want to have a warrant to subscribe for shares. Usually you tend to sort of have a warrant instrument. Although for some recent deals now, they've been dispensing with the warrant aspect, but they used to be pretty standard that if you're going for mezzanine finance, you'd want a warrant to enable you acquire shares in the company should the company do well in the future. And then, so those are the key aspects. Then if we come back to the equity, the shareholders the management who are buying the company. Remember, the management are teaming up with the private equity house. So invariably what they do is to provide a mixture of finance in the form of equity and loans. So they call these equity investor and vendor loans. Okay. and usually these loans will tend to have security. So there will be the usual security structure. So we go back to some of the things we talked about in regard to fixed and floating charges. We now know we know the difficulties you would run into if you try to take a fixed charge over accounts receivables, right? So just be aware of that. Nobody's going to be asking you to draft these things for present purposes, but the idea basically is just to be aware of this. In terms of drafting points, obviously, if you're drafting a floating charge, then crystallization events are important, because if you have automatic crystallization, that could also create problems, because when you sort of crystallize too quickly and you do not know it has crystallized, right? Because so imagine you tie your crystallization to your financial covenants, huh? So you've put in certain formulas, and then you say if certain ratios are not maintained, that would crystallize the floating charge. But you do not know it's been crystallized. Then what you'd end up with is an argument about waiver when you then need your crystallization, right? So at the point where maybe the company's collapsing, and then you seek to enforce your charge, and you say, oh, my charge crystallized, then you'll see arguments about waiver, because you've had a practice of automatically crystallizing without really being aware. So those are some of the issues. Those are some of the issues that one would need to be mindful of. Then in terms of how you structure it, that is, in terms of how you structure the relevant loans. Remember, on the one hand, you have the target company, and then you have the banks and the finance house bringing the cash. So if you try to imagine, I suppose the target company is at the bottom, right? The target company is at the bottom, and the target company would need, the shareholders in the target company anyway, would need cash. That's pretty clear. So where's the cash coming from? The cash would come, let's go back to these companies here now. The cash will come from NewCo 2, right? The cash will come from NewCo 2 to the target shareholders. So essentially, the target shareholders are entering into a deal with NewCo 2, and NewCo 2 is getting money from two sources. It's getting money from the banks. It's also getting money from NewCo 1, right? And in some cases, NewCo 1 itself could get money from elsewhere, right? So the vendors could come up with an additional source of financing, right? But let's simplify it. Essentially, we, the management, right? We, the greedy ones who want to take over this business, we've gone to meet family, friends, and we've formed this NewCo 1, right? And NewCo 1 then capitalizes NewCo 2, right? So then NewCo 2 is then used as the acquisition vehicle. Now, obviously, what this means is that if anything happens to the target company, when we acquire the target company, the banks who fund directly will have priority if you fund it, if you structure it that way. So essentially, what you're trying to do is to achieve what we call structural subordination. In the U.S., they tend to do more contractual subordination. In the UK and Europe, it's more structural subordination. So essentially, just imagine the target company does a deal with NewCo 2, right? So remember when we looked at the takeover code and we looked at Rule 3, and we said they needed to be advised. Advised in regard to who? Because they're doing a deal with NUCO 2. In fact, let me try and see if I can draw something here. Let's see. Just to illustrate it. Okay, so we have the target, not too big. Okay. Okay, yeah. So we have the target company here. Right, that's the target company. Can you see? Okay, yeah. Got it. And then you have, usually the NUCO 2 is always called Holdco, but let's call it NUCO 2. NUCO 2, yeah. Right, and then the top company here. Right. So, N1. I hope you can see this. Okay. Now, so, you don't have a bank, yeah, okay, you don't have a bank here, so the bank essentially brings senior debt, senior debt, right? And if you want mezzanine finance, if you want to bring in mezzanine finance, you want to subordinate the mezzanine finance, right, to the senior debt, and that's why you would have in the inter-creditor agreements, you'll have subordination provisions, right? So essentially, one way you do this is to make sure the money goes to the top company here, right? So let's call this, you know, usually they call it high yield, right? So let's say mezzanine debt. I hope this is making, okay, yeah. So remember, these are the shareholders. These are the, I should have painted this a different color. Right? These are the shareholders. Right? T are the shareholders. They need to be paid. And remember, we came to you. You said, so you're the sharpest shareholder. You say, do a DCF. And you would use that as a floor. And then we then said, okay, maybe you consulted, and you said, I also need an advisor, right, who will advise me. If the company is subject to the takeover code, it will be a Rule 3 advisor. But even if the company is not subject to the takeover code, it's common sense you need an advisor, right, who will advise on the deal. And the reason why you need an advisor to advise on the deal is because it's your management who are doing this, okay? Then what you then have here is the management form a company. So we form this company, right? This is where our family, friends put money, right? They put money here. And in addition to that, we bring in a private equity house that joins us. So the private equity house also puts money here, right? And we then also say, well, the money that the private equity house is bringing and our money is not enough to do this deal. Maybe this deal is so expensive, right? Because remember, we said we need acquisition finance and a working capital facility. So we then say, you know something, we need to talk to a bank. So what do? We go to meet this bank, right? And then we say, but we need working capital finance. You know, we need working capital finance, so let's go to meet a mezzanine, you know, finance provider, you know, high yield, you know, debt. Let's meet such a person. So we go here. So the money from here goes, so there should be an arrow here. That money goes there into our vehicle, right? And some of, and then essentially another thing that would happen would be that in regard to the target company we're trying to take over, the money from senior debt would come here, and then money from here, because obviously we would have capitalized this, would come here to do this deal, right? So all we just want to do is regulate our relationship amongst ourselves as shareholders and as creditors. And for that purpose, sorry, I'll just change this. For that purpose, too many things. So, yeah, okay. For that purpose, you'll need what we talked about. You'll need the security agreement, which would simply contain guarantees. Usually the guarantees, sometimes the guarantees tend to be in an ancillary letter, sometimes they tend to be in the security package. I'm just focusing for now on fixed and floating charges. If you ask me, what are we going to take fixed charges on, I'll be saying plant and machinery, right? Plant and machinery. If you say to me, are we going to take fixed charges over book debts, I would say, don't worry, you just can't, right? We know, because of the risk of recharacterization, right? And all that. Then in regard to the regulation of the priority of the lenders, I might just upload for you an inter-creditor agreement. Nobody's going to test you on it, but just so that you see it. So when you see an inter-creditor agreement, you would see how the different creditors are basically ranked by agreement. And then remember, I talked about warrants, that if you are a mezzanine finance provider, you may want to enjoy some of the equity later on. So you could say, hey, I want a warrant to subscribe for shares, in which case a warrant would be one of the standard documents to go with it, right? But usually that tends to be for the mezzanine finance providers, right? And then, of course, you then have your subordination deed, which regulates the priority between the lenders and the equity providers, especially because some of the equity providers would be providing what they call equity loans. So equity providers actually giving loans. So essentially the creditors would be saying, we want to subordinate these guys so that we come first, right? So those are the key things that, if you kind of go back to that seminar, we talked about the sort of issues you need to look at when taking security. So just kind of relate it to this. How you negotiate this package ultimately will be a matter of bargaining strength, right? The underlying values of the business and all that. But I think the key challenges would be trying to convince the shareholders to sell, right? Trying to convince the shareholders to sell, and trying to configure your shares. Because if you think about it, if you're management and these guys are coming, the banks are coming, your private equity people are coming, then how do you configure your shares to ensure that you actually benefit from the fruits of your labors? Essentially, that's really it. So I will stop here, and when you come back, I would like us to have a revision class, just because, just to go over some past questions, right? So no obligation, but and if you can't attend, you watch it on the system. So when you come back from your break, we'll just have a class. Or do you mind having a class? It's just, yeah.
Actually, as that we are following LI12,
It might be a clash.
we have
with,
an
with the
exam on that day because we have a take home exam
No, which day?
on the 23rd of April.
23rd and 25th.
Yeah, but have they fixed? Sorry,
Yeah.
They are fixed.
fixed what?
I mean, the
No,
revision rate.
Oh, okay, I see. No, but have they fixed the day for your revision?
It
Yeah.
said like 26.
Oh, okay.
Ah, you just didn't see that.
26,
It said
okay.
26.
Is it 26? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
At King's Building.
So it doesn't clash, right?
No, no.
Okay,
He
okay.
just told me that it was 26.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay, okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so, yeah, so hopefully you'll be able to have done some revision and then you'd come with more questions. Yeah.
You said that we needed to get a gatekeeper to ensure that the management didn't trick us, but I didn't quite get what was the conclusion. What will the gatekeeper ensure? How will he make sure that we are not getting tricked?
Reputational capital, reputational capital.
Is this like a financial advisor?
Yeah, reputational capital. If you get people, in anything, if you get people who stand to lose if their reputation is damaged, right, they will do a good job, they'll protect you. So if you bring in, okay, I was once doing some work on this transaction and we needed an agreement. An agreement basically said that we'll need reputable accountants to, not to audit anything, but just to go through certain accounts, right? And this was not a forensic check, but just to check. And so if you look at the accounting standards, there are different layers, there are different types. So you have, with engagements, you have like an audit, which is high level, forensic, and then there's another lower one, but And what then happened was that they went for some unknown accountants. Now, for me, there was no reputational capital. That means you can't really be sure. And I basically said, no, let's use, I think we went for PwC, because I know that if you go with people with reputational capital, then, how much are you going to pay them to make it worth their while to throw everything away? So to answer your question, if the shareholders are advised by an advisor with reputational capital, then that advisor will be highly unlikely to squander its reputation. You'll be well advised, in short. But if you want to do the calculations yourself, you're free to. Well, like he said earlier, you probably would end up with a DCF. And the problem with that, anyway, is if you do that, if you do the figures out, so we basically say you look at cash flows to infinity, and the theory behind that is that you get to a point where the figures have to go down, right? Because it imagines that the business would have competition, and therefore you will not be able to increase your margins. So towards the end, it goes down. So that's not the kind of figure you want to use. I want to be using a figure which enables me go into the heads of management. Why are you so greedy? Why do you want to buy this company? Maybe you know things I don't. Right? So maybe you need to share. Yeah.
And that's why I was wondering, how would a financial advisor, what's in the management's heads, like in terms of, we have this unexplored opportunity.
Yeah, because that's why you pay them. They know what they're doing.
They know that.
Yeah, well, because they're questions that will ask, isn't it? They're questions that will ask. They will know the things to check out.
And then if they don't answer truly, then it's
exactly. And they will know the warranties to say you need to put, right? So these are people who, just as you're reading your law, that's how they read theirs. So they know what to do. Yeah.
In the picture that I was wondering, the loan from the bank, is it given to the target or to New Couture? Because I think I understood from the beginning that it was given to New Couture, but...
Yeah, so the loans come from two sources. So the major one, which is the senior debt, the senior debt goes to the company, right? And then it is used. But then you also have the high yield one, which goes to the other company, right? So the mezzanine finance people are not putting money where, imagine Lloyd's is bringing the money, right? So if Lloyd's is bringing £10 million and some other company, a mezzanine finance provider, is bringing in £5 million, they're not putting the monies in the same place, right? Lloyd's is going closer to the assets, and the mezzanine guy is going away from the assets. That's it. Yeah. Okay.
In your experience, is it only the senior lenders who are going to the debt push down, or can it also be mezzanine lenders who are doing some sort of debt push down?
Yeah, depending on, I mean, generally, it'll be the way I said it, but generally it depends. It will depend on bargaining power, but there's a reason why you're mezzanine, right?
Yeah,
You know,
so
yeah.
Generally, just
Yeah.
the senior lenders.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much. So I look forward to seeing you after the break. Have a rewarding time. Don't stress too much. Sleep is important. Yeah. But you know that. I'm sure you know. You know, sleep is good. So very good for the memory. Yeah. Yeah, okay, good.
More or less when I will know the results.
You should return around pretty quick. Yeah, return around pretty quick.
Thanks.
Quick question about corporate governance.
Okay. Okay, I hope I'll be able to answer it. As in, what's the question?
No, I mean, just point of view, because we came across the board of directors and we say that it's an ineffective tool of corporate governance.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the independent directors, or even the market for corporate control.
Yeah.
Full of rules, like in America for some years and even here, included the corporate. From your experience, is there any jurisdiction, any model to follow which has
Good rule.
yes, like board of directors for corporate control. You know, we have like a ERP and like the timetables, all of these.
Yeah. So I mean,
Where should they look at?
okay. Now, if you're talking about, you know, I mean, if you're talking about the board of directors,
Or to ensure that it is, it effectively monitor the managers. Is there any jurisdiction?
well, yes, it's highly debatable. There's a time when people talk.
Start our lunch break and then we can go to the nice cafe or where we were yesterday.
So it's very
We can say goodbye. Oh yes, but we still decide. Do you think that all the cafeterias are going to be open during our time with presentation? Because like for example in my uni they were like cutting everything down because only the law students were still there and everyone else was, so everything was back for us. I got the first draft of the article. I can they showed me the And when do you have the meeting with the supervisor? I'll be right back to the... Sorry. My side. we work with Walmart. And he also sent like a big picture. I don't know if it's yeah. But when he's where's Harvard? Boston. Harvard is Boston. Okay. That's a good one. Oh, so cool. And I put a nice picture of the but they cut away the nice the lines, the golden ones that were left and right of me. I can translate it to you later. Like, whatever. But they shortened it. I knew it was too much, but still. I think they could give more than 2 pages to not one. Or half a page because the picture's so big. Is he still thinking? No, he's not. Oh. He's just also sponsored by my law firm. And they changed stuff and they didn't change the content, for example.
我是来凑合，我这课是来作为娱乐的。但你选好你我主要为税法，然后还有一门公司助理，公司是上一期。不是，我是一门叫做内叫不叫公司，那叫企业分子公司，就一共有7个人，4个中国人加我一个男生，4个女生加我一个男生，再加一土耳其加一个英国。他讲的不是 corporate finance， 他讲的是corporate governance， 他讲的是 enterprise。那更广啊！我们可搞笑了，英国的 NHS 是怎么运作的？英国的大学教育是怎么运作的？英国的电网、能源是怎么运作？他讲这种特搞笑，我跟你说，那就是完全你就听着，你就觉得是休闲。那个课是不是？然后写商科的课，写个 S 就可以，5000个，而且是6月底交。这门课我就不把它当为课了，我说等我5月份考完。他的课不用担心，我肯定能过。对，那咱们我跟你说，你也不要太低，弄个 merit 还是要。60分。我现在感觉我拿过50分属于啥？是 pass。来了，兄弟，努力吧！我跟你说为什么？你要想着现在弄个 pass， 你万一 fail， 你现在弄个 merit 要考不太好，你也至少50多分，是吧？这人不能直接把自己放到最低，那也不行。他是一种当然首先很高，就是想最低保底的。保底的。就是我们现在我们得注重战术，不是战略了，就是大家怎么看书，怎么复习，有针对性、高效一点，那比较好，是吧？大目标反正大家都能过啊就行了嘛，对吧？这个我们怎么样？是这样的，我觉得你一个人可能然后所有的那个，就是说先你就是说自己重心听完就是说你到时候再互相补充一下，然后你不可能所有的点你每个人都能搞到那么全嘛。哎，这我没这个很明白，是不是你在这诉讼啊？这个不是，你别说那个。啊，这是什么课呀？这是
我跟你说，他是这样说的，他说呢，就说能不能就是税务你都不是，他现在就是说一个就是他那个公章要那张纸发给你的，就是他要签约去嘛，他很着急，那个仓油我们发给你一个Word的话，可以说好像是签字吧。
期货你就不要3个是吧？等一下吧，等他来走。
对呀，然后你付
没事，你高2分，
高2分，然后章现在下来了，明天才能下。啊？对，章早就有了，对。
他感觉3年就其他的就是把狗文档嘛，对吧？但我看实际上是他开的那个不止吧，就是讨论那个不止吧，就是说课是就给多少人的课不止8节课，
不止8节课，因为他在有的班级的课1节课分不完1个。
对，所以我是让他把那个题也给我一起发，妈对不上，我弄混了。
因为那个啥，他有像我和王小波上那个陈阳兰，我们仨都是老师，然后我们班抽的一周一套，解释一套，都看。然后
我觉得这样，他那个咱俩不是前4个嘛，到时候我互相发一下，你有时间也把我那个也听一听。他那个是，那应该是上学期就4套这样的吧？
上学
这不是漏嘛，就是带考题带补嘛，对吧？你知道，我觉得他那个搞一搞，然后有时间你就再去听那个我觉得重点是先考那个。
因为现在的话，我的想法就是，现在就是9不上嘛，我的LI12上面看完了，20刚刚开始，我们是几个人分的，1周，把宿舍都搞好，把那个师资东西找好，然后别的单词班的话，我看我这样教完了之后，就集中的时间就天天攻那样的。
我发现1，他想他老师特别傻。
其实现在来讲的话，说实话，LI有什么？他说的就是你们去年的时候几个考那个都知道，按照去年的并不让考，几乎去年都不管，是这样说的。然后这样看的基础不管，这个课就不管，一般就是有点超了，那啥。我感觉大家其实要是大家一块儿准备完了之后，带着资料就进去，反正也是开会的话，只要是东西可以写，一定这样开始。这个东西其实就是我感觉大家最后就其实我感觉就最后说起这个几个人以后，像有些人进来之后就乱了。
对。
像是藏医生呀，经常藏医生就乱了。再一个，现在这种题，我就在想，我直接拿那个他们拿那个软件他们那些他那个东西都翻译过来，看他那个上课那个文档看完之后，重点还是把那个软件直接摘了，这样还是在这块儿的问题。然后你肯定是会出问题，我感觉是这么感觉。
他那个是搞多深啊？我觉得那个是做那个情况就是，你确实搞
你感觉这个课讲的是？
什么深？那你比如你答题的时候，大概答到多少什么程度？就是只要回他怎么问怎么答就行，还是说
怎么问怎么答，尽量相关的多写点，就多写点的话，你可能会错。另外是，
因为他之前不是考试嘛，这个题目是来3题相当于观点类的，他那个讲我们活力观点、小众观点，我就答一个观点就行，就是他可能是一观点给2方面的这个对和错，或者一方面的这个，一方面的那个。我们中国一般就是答前一方面，他们那个是2方面都知道的。
他那相当于观点在写的时候，像雅思都是那么写的。这个东西到底好不好？比较好。然后可以先写个余地先扬，余地先抑，写完了之后它其实有点像这种东西。看你吃点能找对。
他就你像活力写那个议论文一样，我就选这个观点，然后一般讲就那个，然后那个不让你太强烈的观点。
而且他这边不要求你，不让你去关注那个解题。
对。
比较怎么样？
对。应该就是到时候以观点稍微多写一点，有点依据，对吧？只要别太离谱，能写到点子上。
像这门考试我们是7号考，然后这门考 的5月7号的课和这门课是这门课呀。这门是5月7号的吧？5月7号是早上10点。哦，那我当时记得有一个是那个 MI， 我记得可能是 MI 是4月23的是吧？北大集团是4月23。哦，对，法研早上我记错了。这个课是5月7号考的。5月7号不是5月底吗？上午10点考。我的课表说的是5月7号考。这个5月15号是通知吧？当时是这里有一个大课，它这两个全都是表题。然后7号考的话，其实那我们其实现在就分一下之后，其实多给点时间，因为浪费考试。对。像这种咱就不是说不重要。我其实说实话啊，我就是谁都想拿高分，但是就是如果拿不到的话，我想后期。不像他想拿 distinction 毕业。啊。他想拿 distinction 毕业是什么毕业？distinction 70分嘛。对，他想拿那个毕业。哦，这么厉害。他俩平时有好多课也不去上，也哎呀，我说句实在话啊，我感觉他理解为什么不是说那啥，我跟他讨论过问题，而且他是总愿意教我这教我那，一说完之后他就听。然后这个我不想，我就想一个最，我跟你一样情况下，最后他们从1个小时1个月的质量相当于咱们他们是本土语言的，然后再一个就是他说那个用的时候不见得单词，光单独上面很形象，因为就特意的去跟他给然后后来当时好多人其实都想拿，我也想好学这个，那你这样拿了的话，那我最起码尽量学考试嘛，还是继续过就行。然后现在这段时间，这段时间也跟人也来看，开始听。那你看看题目报了我还没怎么那个，你怎么前面学了，你后面我也没真没好多，还真没怎么学啊。大概有些课都知道，就是就好弄了，有的东西不知道，就得从头儿一点点开始弄。其实反正我想法就是，哎，尽量弄吧，弄成什么样弄什么样。反正这个东西。我的那个 litigation arbitration上面都是各种各样的挂历，就是每门课都要实时挂历，他就告诉我们说你放进去，然后但是说实话题答起来，啊对，我跟你说个事儿啊，他们上那个税法的，有个学生中国人不够满分儿，税法，对，就是那个老师就是说他把那个答案看完之后发现就是通篇就是语法错误，还有措辞，单词写错了，但是老师还是给你满分了。就是那种我不知道这个东西是不是普及啊，就是老师不是特别注重你的语法和你的那个叫什么，就看你的那个思路，对不对？我不知道这些老师是不是，应该这些老师不会这么深刻的是吧？应该不是，应该不是。所以他就看你整个题答题的思路和你的想法。所以我个人感觉，如果这样的话，我们就把这个东西要捋清了。思路他肯定，他们也没有时间，他要你读研究生这个阶段，他也没必要死读你这个。他也知道有些你可能不是那么精确，但他重点还是在于你这个思路和你的答题的那个方式。对，你有肯定会产生对。他要是2个小时考2个题的话，那我们尽量就写一个上道的然后到时候看，到时候就是找啥好材料，咱们对，我是准备这样的，就是说去找材料吧，然后你要先听有什么时间你去找一找，说那个反正哪怕就是不行，我可以看一下，我要记下来的，反正就这样子吧，多准备一点。不行的话，提前让那些几个这样子几个孩子的问题，然后打算去学习，对对对，你可以有时间是最好了，那就写思路写。怎么答怎么就是像他们这样光写一句话，自己放话都是公司治理也是这么那要这样，我觉得这个课像这几门课，你要是出现在老师跟前，一般你要认真准备过，应该问题不大。让你考60还是让我给你考搞清楚。对，现在搞的话，你就别到时候过了之后，哎呀，我没考60，没考，那肯定也早好多人 我们买得了。是，我他妈都不上这个课本来我说不用，我说你把那个公司法给我拿过来，公司就那些购买拿过来，我说能用的话白给你，因为很多一很多。我说他那不少材料呢。拿回来，拿回来，我也是看那个直接给他挺好，然后把它填出来。我们之前就说这个问题是，如果你这个小组是可能厉害的人也多，人家咱正考试的时候，人家也不愿意管你，在自己拿自己，咱是去找小组委员或者人家没这个委员，咱还小组不为自己就那么几个人，大家知道这个是世界，然后以后一块儿就把这考试过了。是，就是静静你说的对，他人家社会比较好，人家他不当你，他告不告诉你是吧？告诉他会过去顺便说两句，然后就爱理不理的，他就觉得那个你跟你没意思了嘛。对，那就没意思。那你这样式的话，那你不如说找一个就是假如说他自己学那个60分，大家使劲儿，可能就真的做到了60分，他可能7分到很30分，因为原先你们其实不是说你要让一个主角，你习近平是谁？就是是正常的出来的，他是那个跟他在一起太闹心了。这边告诉那边买的，然后还损着你。那个你说那个高兴不是，就是你说这个东西嘛，就是因为大家在这需要有一个氛围，它是不像那个嘛，你要真的把人也是不爽。我觉得是，我就想那个去啊，是这样的，像那个我觉得不一样，没有时间了解这个。我觉得我觉得没这个特老师其实没有，你就把它，你去把它的那个材料当中你重点提炼出来就行了，然后把它提出来，然后把那个重点之后把那个对应法条摘出来。哎，对，行了，因为你没那么多时间，然后像哪个可以提炼呢？F1，那个你要有那些有时间的话可以提炼，它先重点的，那有的时候你重点的那个有的课件有点太多，就挑一个。你听到没吗？就是那个那一段时间，那个原点那个点不会考，你想干嘛？说的对不？没那么时间。在那边啊？对。那你不是去银行吗？我这个去银行不太敢。对，那你就去那个。我上完课去。对，那也行。昨天就是我们上周晚上自习室去了嘛，就是跟金明浩说那个考试他考试的事儿，就提到那个方案，就说一直在抱着金明浩，然后他改的，然后让金明浩来承认。金明浩是谁？一个税法的，这人特别好的那种，你知道是啥吗？那么配合他，那么老那种，不会拒绝别人，然后天天就找下个月时间找，说按照你这个说就。你毕业出好，你的理工男你就会，从大学学的， Oh, it's you.
I was finished at 1 p.m. on Thursday.
You know that.
So,
Well, I guess.
how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm alright.
No problem.
What's happening? I broke the printer, guys.
Which
Like, yeah, well, okay, I didn't break it. I decided to print all of my notes for banking, so I can start revision. And I upload all the files and stuff. And instead of, starting to print one by one, I was supposed to do, I unfortunately clicked print all. And like hundreds of papers started printing. I was like, cancel, because I had 10 minutes for the lecture. And just like randomly started printing pages from one document to the other. The thing. And I don't know what happened because I just left. So if there's a printer broken, yeah.
You don't know.
They don't know my name though.
What if we say it?
And my voice is weird, so maybe they will not
Yeah,
recognize me.
I've got one. Your throat.
Yeah, it's like,
We should take a brush for less.
yeah.
So
So last night,
make sure
I
I
cooked
know.
for tomorrow. You go, are you free tomorrow? No, my.
Well, I'm not lying, actually.
Wine.
Yeah.
In the beach time.
Sorry.
I was starting to get emotional, but then I was like, okay, we have a visual test as well.
But we won't
I'll
have
get
any-
emotional then, and by then I'll be too stressed for the exams. I don't know.
I think we only have like.
I do. We have 3 competitions.
Company.
We have company to 12, let's see. We don't have a lecture.
Private, I'm not coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have private in afternoon.
Which of them not
But I mean, I'm still coming here.
I only have company. That's it.
Guys, I'm
We
going
have
to cry. I don't want to leave you. We have to keep in touch.
No, we have.
Honestly.
No, we're doing.
For our masters.
Like, what you'll be next year.
Well, hopefully we'll find out within a week.
Okay.
Maybe
But what are the options?
Kings are coming to Europe.
Which is where?
Belgium.
Okay. We'll come to Belgium. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we're going to Austria.
I'm going to
And then we're coming.
And
Yeah. If it's easy. And then we're.
Post Malone goes to Austria, I'm doing. Okay.
Is it going?
Belgium has
Doesn't
amazing
matter.
concerts. So.
Is there a possibility or we just say?
There is a possibility. I'm not sure if it was.
I want to as well. What? When? September?
No.
Now?
He still hasn't announced that he's gonna go, but.
No. It's my last lecture. I'm feeling emotional.
I know, it's my last lecture as well.
We were taking a picture. You were out of it. Come on, everyone. Look.
But let's see what outside.
Yes, the picture was so much bigger. Do you have a tutorial?
Here?
We need to run the tutorial.
Yeah.
It's fine, it's fine.
Guys, I have a tutorial.
Yeah, you go outside, you
We
go
run.
wherever you go.
So you made me think that actually this was the right way. I was going in the wrong direction before I saw you. Should I come as well, or should I just one with them?
Oh, you like today?
No, just the first bits on avoidable transactions.